All right, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. And today we have Pat Talarico all the way from, do I say Phoenix, Arizona, or is it Peoria? Where are you?
Well, actually, yeah, Peoria, Phoenix. Yeah, I'm just outside of Phoenix a little bit.
And you've been there since 81, is that right?
Yep, since 81 I've been here.
And have you ever come back to Erie to visit?
Oh, yeah, I've been back, not lately. I think '09 was the last time I was back. I actually was visiting some friends up in Buffalo that lived in Erie. As a matter of fact, Sheldon Peterson's brother, who now lives down in Nashville, and that was their last times in Buffalo. And then we took a ride down to Erie, and we went to see his brother Sheldon, who I actually graduated in high school with, and he was in my high school band.
Oh.
And they were playing at Sherlock's downtown. I don't know now if that exists or not, but
it does not. No, it's all gone. Yeah.
Yeah. They the band he has was playing there, and some people that I remember from way back were all around and stuff like that. So that was the last time I was back, and that type of thing.
Was that the Heliotropes he was in back then, or you remember?
Yeah, and I the Heliotropes, I'm not sure if that's what they call themselves now or if he still has a band, but
yeah, I know he played. He was playing with Sam Hyman for a little while in Sam's James Taylor tribute that he does now.
Okay.
But I don't think he's playing with him anymore. But super talented guy, and
oh, definitely, yeah. He was in my high school band when we were together. It was weird because he moved from Strong Vincent out to Fairview High School, and I got to know him, just through music, basically. And right about that time, the lead guitar player that we had, left, and I'm like, you play guitar? And he goes, yeah, I sure do. and boom, he fit right in. So
what was the band called?
It was called the Emphatics.
The Emphatic. Ooh, that's great. This is
all we did was play high school dances and stuff like that,
Gotcha. And this was Fairview, you said? Is that where you went to high school?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So I made a lot of connections through Sheldon with folks in Erie, and Strong Vincent, because that's where he went to all the way up to his senior year, which he did. That's how I got to know him and met a lot of friends that way. And we stayed friends all the way through, even while I was in Blueberry and stuff like that. So
you were already playing guitar in high school?
Oh, yeah. I was playing guitar. Yeah, back then, you either were in sports, you were a jock, or, or, there wasn't much else,
Right.
So.
When did you start?
Actually, I started playing on a saxophone.
Oh.
And right about that time, we used to get together on like Saturday afternoons, and we had a drummer. All he had was a snare and a ride cymbal, and there was another sax player and a fellow that played guitar. That was we were all from Fairview, and and we get together on Saturday afternoons and jam and stuff like that.
Sure.
And just about every week I'd pick up this guy's guitar and he would show me something, on the guitar, and I got really interested in it. So, I switched to guitar. Of course, when the Beatles came out, you had to play guitar,
Right.
You couldn't play saxophone,
What year was this?
Oh, gosh, this was probably about 67, 68, right in there. Maybe 66, even as early as that, because I graduated in high school in 69.
Okay.
And we had right about then, that's when our high school band, the Emphatics, that's when we, just kind of disbanded. And
Okay. What type of music did the Emphatics play?
well, we played Power Bear and the Raiders, and you had to play instrumentals like Wipe Out and Walk Don't Run and stuff like that, and
Right.
and so those were the kind of bands that were happening. Wild Thing by the Trogs was like really popular, and let's see, what else did we have to play? Hanky Panky by Tommy James, stuff like that. That's what our high school band did, and I can remember that's how I started singing with this bass player we had, and he goes, I can't handle this singing anymore. And I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to do it.
That's how it started. Wow. Okay.
That's how I started singing it, because I had to.
Yeah. Whatever happened to the other Emphatics? Did they go on to play in other bands? Do you know, or do you remember?
No, not well. Brian Fells. I don't know if that name has ever come across on your. Well, Brian Fells was our original guitar player that left, and Sheldon had replaced him. So Brian Fells was about the only one out of the band that went on musically, to do other things and that kind of stuff. Gotcha. As a matter of fact, him and his wife, Angela, they had a band together. A lot of this was after I left Erie.
Right.
And, but anyhow, they moved, when I moved out here, I had heard they moved to California. And they lived out there for a little while, and I got a call from them one day, and they said, hey, we're passing through Phoenix, would stop in and would say hi. So out of the blue, I got to see Brian and Angela, and gosh, I hadn't seen them in a long time, and so, touched base with them, and that was that. So
I think she played in the Moonlighters.
I believe so. Yeah. Any names of bands that they had, it was all. Yeah, that was after I left Erie, so not familiar with it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's who that is, and I'm sure as people listen to this, if I'm wrong, they'll correct me in the comments, but that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
When one of the things I always ask folks, when we're talking about your origin stories, is where did you take lessons? I know eventually you taught at Osiki's, but is that where you took lessons?
I didn't know. I started out from, oddly enough, downtown. There was a gentleman named Tony Luciano, and I was taking my saxophone lessons from him, and he had a little place called the Erie School of Music, and they were he was located right next door to Altadonna's. Mm-hmm. That's where a lot of, ATV played there once and once or twice, and there was a lot of, bands went through there, local bands and stuff like that. But that's where I took lessons. And then when I told him, I said, geez, I'd like to play guitar. And he said, well, I know guitar also. How about taking 1 week saxophone, 1 week, taking on guitar? And then finally I just switched over to guitar. And then when I got out of high school, I had some friends at Oziki's, and I really had a good touch with the younger students. A lot of the guitar player teachers that were there were they gravitated towards the advanced students, which I couldn't do. But I was really good with, elementary school kids and stuff like that. And, the idea was to sell guitars and amplifiers, and so I was really good at that, and that's how I ended up at Oziki's. And then, I was, that's when I met Tony Stefanelli, and then we had a band called Truth that we played around, and we actually played up at Peak and Peak, Eagle Ridge. Eagle Ridge.
And Mike Reddick right? Wasn't
Yep,
Mike?
Mike
Yeah.
Redcliffe. That's how I first got in contact with Mike.
Yeah.
And then he kind of left, and then again, well, I guess I'll do the singing.
So you were just playing
And
guitar.
yeah, I was just playing guitar, and Tony was playing guitar. We had a bass player, and we had three horns.
Mm,
And we had, it was we were trying to imitate, Chicago and Blood, Sweat and Tears.
sure.
That was the big deal then, but uh, funny how you should mention Mike Redcliffe, because that's how I kind of got in touch with him. And then he asked me one time if I would, he said, I can get some solo jobs singing. And one of them was at the Bifwicks, which was a couple doors down from Oziki's music store in the West Erie
Right.
Plaza. So he said, would you play guitar? And I said, sure. And so that's how my Mike Redcliffe connection, which ultimately leads into, I've been reminiscing this over the last couple of weeks, anticipating this conversation. But
Yeah.
that's how and then Mike and I played mostly at Lord Bifwick's, and he was doing just kind of, pop stuff that was
Okay.
real popular at that time. That was, probably about the mid 70s, somewhere in there, or maybe early 70s. It was before Red, White, and Blueberry.
And you were
Well,
just
Red, White,
going,
and
and was the band just Mike and Pat? I think it
yeah,
was.
it was just
Yeah.
a duo. It was just
Okay.
a duo, and that's all they had there,
Oh,
basically
okay.
at that time. And
Gotcha.
John Ems ended up playing there too.
Sure.
Um, and I touch base with John a lot. I go up to Nashville to visit Sheldon Peterson's brother David. He lives in Nashville, and I go up there and visit. And then they also know John Ems, and we get together all the time for dinner and hang
Oh,
out and stuff like that. So,
cool.
but anyhow, so Mike Redcliffe, when we're playing together, he comes to me, and after we've done, almost about a year's worth of gigs, and together, the two of us, and he says, "Look, there's this band that wants me to, try out, and see if they like us and each of us, singing,
Hmm.
And he says, "You want to come along with me?" And they're called Red, White, and Blueberry.
Oh,
And
okay.
I said, "Sure." And the guitar player in Red, White, and Blueberry at the time was Bernie DiNardo.
Right. This was before
And
Marty
Bernie,
had joined. Yeah.
oh yeah, way before Marty.
And so had the band
Uh,
been playing out at this point, or were they still kind of
yes,
forming?
yes,
Oh,
they had a
okay.
singer that there was Bernie DiNardo on guitar, John Erickson on bass, and Bert Rakowski was on drums, and they had a singer. And I'll be darned if I can remember his
Hmm.
name. I even cut his hair a few times at my barber shop,
You cut
but I
everyone's hair,
can't remember.
including mine. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I can't remember his name, but anyhow, he left the band, and through a drummer friend that used to play in the Mike's high school band, Mike Redicliffe's high school band, he knew Bernie DiNardo, and Bernie said, boy, this would be great if we can get him as a singer. Well, anyhow, going back a couple of steps, Mike says, "Hey, this band wants to, I want to check them out, and they want to check me out." And he says, "Would you come with me?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So we drive out to Bert Rakowski's house where they rehearse in the basement. And, the first thing is, Bert's dad was had East Side Beer Distributor. So there was a keg on tap in the basement. So that was a plus right off the
Nice.
bat,
Yeah.
And so anyhow, we're sitting there having a beer and Mike is, trying out some songs with him, and, he ended up saying, "Yeah, I'd like to join, but," and everybody's head went up, including mine. And he said, "I'm not coming in without my guitar player."
Mm,
And I'm like, I didn't even know he was going to do this, and I'm
yeah.
like, "Me?" And he goes, "Yeah." So, and Bernie was like, yeah, I could use another guitar player, Bernie was, smoking on lead, and I played a little bit of lead and was, learning, but I played a rhythm guitar mostly, and sang some numbers, and so anyhow, so we rehearse, and everything's going good, and Mike, a couple of times, he was late for rehearsal and stuff like that, and we'd end up, I would say, well, here, let's try this song, and I'll sing it, and they're like, okay, so I would sing it, and they were like, okay, well, we'll add that to our repertoire, and so anyhow, our first gig was, I believe, at Barron College. I'm a little fuzzy on that, but I think it was just, a college dance type thing, and we were out there and we're waiting. We're all set up and we're waiting for Mike. And we had to start. And Bernie and John are like, okay, you're singing, man. There it is again.
And that was it.
I was singing. And so I sang a few numbers, and he eventually showed up. And at that point, it was like, that's when Mike was like, Blueberry at the time that we were doing like Jethro Tull and James Gang and stuff like that, and it really, really wasn't Mike's cup of tea.
Right.
He just, I could tell he wasn't feeling comfortable, and they kind of got that feeling too, and then we had a group meeting, and they're like, well, practice is next week, it's the four of us now,
Oh, okay.
So that's how Red, White, and Blueberry started.
Wow. I didn't know that. And so Mike never really he played that one gig with you, or?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, okay.
That I can recall, and he was late, and just to fill in for like about a half an hour, I sang everything that I knew that with them that that I could. I can't even remember what I think it was, like Brown Sugar or Jumpin' Jack Flash, and no stuff like you could, okay, jam in G.
Sure. Yeah.
Do a blues jam in G.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, for those folks who don't know Red, White, and Blueberry, the name, you guys were really popular for a long time, and even had your own fan club. And I mean, a lot of folks from that time period remember you. And so I think of you as exactly what you said, like sort of a harder rock, but rock of the day. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I was right on the type of music.
Yeah. And we were always searching for things that we liked that people could dance to, that was always an issue, is like, what do we do? I like this song, but it's in 6/8, and I don't know if people can dance to that, and so we were always struggling to find, the right songs to play and stuff like that. So we usually the first set people, mostly listened, and as we started out as a foursome, and so yeah, that's pretty much,
Well, how long were they together before you joined?
I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
Maybe about a year or so.
All right.
Yeah, it wasn't very, very long. And the fellow that they had singing did not. I don't know if he ever played guitar with them. I saw them one time at a college beer bash, and I went to see them. This is when Mike told me that, we're going to, I'm going to go out and check them out and sing with them a little bit. And they're looking for a singer. Guy's leaving. And I went to this beer bash just to check them out, and I really liked them, and I don't even think I really, talked to them at all, and I just watched them, that type of thing.
Sure.
But then shortly after that, that's when Mike went for, check them out, and I went with him, and, that was that, so,
yeah,
we
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Mike, I mean, obviously he went on to play with Staircase, and I don't know if he
He
had done
did,
it,
yes.
I think after that, and I mean, he is really one of the best singers we've had in Erie in years, and I've
Oh yeah,
chatted.
definitely.
He's been in tons of different bands. A lot of folks know him from Reds, his band that later played, in the, I think, late 70s,
Hmm.
80s.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Mike isn't one of those names that disappears from the Erie music scene, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Mike was, and Spiral Staircase, that kind of thing. That was more. You know, my singing is like a barroom kind of bluesy classic rock type person, and where Mike was more of a vocalist,
Right.
and so, I know when he did that little stint with Spiral Staircase, I was just like, yeah, that's Mike.
Fits him. Yeah, gotcha. Right. So eventually,
Yeah.
what happens? Does Bernie decide to leave, or how does Marty get in the
Yeah.
band?
Okay. Well, Bernie left, and pretty much because um, we were. It was just kind of getting to him, the amount of gigs and stuff like that. And right about that time is when Joel came into the picture,
Hmm.
and and we started to okay, let's get with it, with the show part of it, and
Right.
we were talking about that kind of stuff, and I think that's what made Bernie kind of go,
Gotcha.
I'm not into
Okay.
this,
Uh,
and he just kind of just, yeah, we'll see you later kind of thing. It
Gotcha.
wasn't, there wasn't a real big to do or anything like that,
And we should
and
point out that Joel is Joel Miller, who at the time was a disc jockey, but also managing you guys, and he had managed.
exactly.
Who else did he manage? I know he managed a bunch of bands back then, and Joel's done a great job of chronicling a lot of Red, White, and Blueberry's history, but other bands too. And he's written
Sure,
articles for the paper. I'm actually going to
sure.
include an article that he wrote on you back in the 80s in your episode page, so folks can see
Oh,
that. Um,
okay.
and but yeah, Joel, thank you, Joel. I know that you listened to this podcast. You did a lot of the legwork for me, because I know that you gave me a lot of the information that you post on the past Erie music, past rock and bands page on
Yep.
Facebook. And but yeah,
Yeah.
so Joel becomes an integral part of the band at this point.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's about the time. Oh, just as Bernie was leaving and Marty, I can't remember how we got in touch with Marty. I can't remember who knew him. He was from Northeast, and
I just had him
I
on the
just can't.
podcast last season,
Yeah,
and I should know the answer to this, but I can't remember. Everybody runs
and
together after a
I
while.
can't remember. It was just all of a sudden Marty was there,
Okay.
and it was pretty much that simple, and he was just into what we were doing, and he progressed, with what we were doing and that type of
Right.
stuff. We went from jeans and a t-shirt to a little bit more glam type stuff, as far as like dressing and things like that, and
Right.
so it all kind of fit together. But right about that time, we had recorded a 45,
Yeah.
and we actually where we recorded it was with a guy named Niebauer,
Yeah.
and
Yep. Skip.
his first name.
Skip.
But anyhow, yeah. He
Yeah.
had a little
Um,
studio,
Yep.
and right
26.
near where Keith Vasheko ended up living, it was
Right.
only a few doors away from that,
That's
in a storefront, and
Yep.
that's where we recorded it. And Niebauer was actually a friend of Bernie DiNardo's, so
yeah.
that's where we recorded that, and then after we recorded it, that's when Marty kind of came into the picture, and so it was like it was
So
a handoff right at that time, and
and
I
that
remember the four of us went up to a lot of times we used to drive up to Toronto a lot, and just try to catch the scene and the music up there. And the four of us went there, and there was the exhibition was going on, and we were walking around, and this guy was drawing pictures. The guys that do caricatures of people and stuff like that, and that's what's on the cover of that 45.
Got it.
That's where we had it done. Was up in Toronto, and Marty was with us, and the four of us were there, and we had that picture. I can't remember if Joel was with us or I don't know.
Well, we should point out. Anyhow, let's back up a second and clear up some things for folks who don't know the scene like you and I do. The Marty that we're referring to is Marty Lee, Marty Haynes. He was on the last season, like I said. He eventually and still does play with Donnie Iris. And at the 45 that you're talking about, you recorded it at Skip Niebauer's American Artist recording studio on 26th Street, like you said, right around the corner from at the time Twang or TRS.
Exactly.
And Marty wrote the song Boogie, right? And you wrote For a Change for that, right?
Yep. And those were the two songs on that 45.
Right. Yep, and so the picture of that caricature that you're talking about, again, folks can see that on the episode page. I have pictures of that thanks to Joel. And Joel actually played a little recording of that, and he had posted it on the that same Facebook group that I talk about, the past rockin' bands, and so folks can hear that. I imagine you still have a copy of that somewhere, right?
I do, and I remember Joel. He was a disc jockey at that time. And he would once in a while he'd try to slip it in, and he used to play those two songs.
That's cool.
Of the band. Yeah.
Do you ever play For a Change anymore? I mean, is it something you dabble with yourself? Do you remember?
I don't. I can remember it's in the key of E, and that's it.
That's it. Okay. So Red, White, and Blueberry then becomes you and Marty and Bert and John for a few years, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we went through the whole thing, with all kinds of different ideas, with Fog Machine and this and that, and and
you had a mirror above Bert's drums, right?
The mirror. The mirror that flipped around, and so on and so on, and actually, even through that time, I believe John DiNardo, who is Bernie's little brother, he still roadied with us. He was part of the crew. So Bernie's brother John was still with us for a little while with when it was the Marty type thing, and
interesting.
So that's we just kind of moved along, and we had opportunities to open for bands, at the Field House, and
it's in my book.
Top was it definitely, and ZZ Top was one. I remember that I brought my Tres Hombres album with me, and I had them. I gave it to one of the techs, and he ran it back, and they all signed it for me.
Cool. And I hope you still have that.
I do have that, and it's kind of funny because skip forward to like 82 after I was out here, there was a gentleman from Erie, Jeff Ford, that he worked for Showco out of Cleveland. And what they would do is they'd pick up for bands, and they would provide the lighting and anything that they needed, and for a show. And they got hired with ZZ Top. And there was a number of people, and he would call me from Texas in Phoenix here, and hey, we're going to be in Phoenix tomorrow, come on down, we're at the Coliseum. And I would go down there and hang out, and at that time, I got to meet ZZ Top again. They were here with ZZ Top, and they actually remembered our band.
Wow.
Oh yeah, the kid that had a million drums, and Frank Beard had the biggest memory of it, through Bert Rakowski.
Right.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, that mirror thing," and they they remembered it.
Well,
And of course, Billy Gibbons gave me a pic. I still have that says
cool.
"Have Mercy" on one side, and then Billy Gibbons on the other. But at the time, Jeff Ford was he was doing Dusty Hill's bass. He was his tech. He would tune tune his guitars. We were on that side of the stage, and of course, I went to the show. We went to lunch in the afternoon, and then they had everything all set up, and I was at the show that night and sitting with Jeff, and so it was kind of interesting, because Dusty would hand him a guitar, and then he'd hand him his next guitar, and Jeff handed me the Eliminator bass, the one with the smoking tailpipe, that they had matching guitars. And he handed it to me, goes, "Oh, here, hold this real quick." And I'm hanging on to this guitar with a smoking tailpipe and just going, "Wow, this is way cool."
That is cool. They didn't remember. They didn't remember the incident that you told me about in the book with Bert pouring the beer on his drums, did they?
No, the only people that would remember that were the tech people. They were really PO'd, because I remember them coming up and grabbing the microphones that were and they were wiping them down, and they were so pissed off.
And he did that just for effect, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On a drum solo, the mirror goes around and he pulls a beer out and then he pours it on there. They never told me about it, because if I would have known about that, I would have nixed that. I would have said, no, nobody's going to like, the people will like it. It'll look really cool.
Right.
They're not going to be real happy. And they weren't. They were really PO'd about that, but it all worked out.
And all worked out. And you also opened for BTO there before the ZZ Top
Yeah, we
show.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Yep. We opened for them. And, it's kind of fuzzy, Chip, but I think we opened for ZZ Top twice.
Oh, okay. All right.
The second time that we opened for them, we had a job up in Geneva, Ohio. And we had two sets of some amplifiers. I can't remember, but the road crew boogied on up to Geneva and set up. And when we finished playing, opening for ZZ Top, we beat-feeded it up to Geneva on the lake to this bar up there, and we played the rest of the night up there. That's all I can remember from the second ZZ Top concert that we opened for him at the Field House. I know, the first one, was what we talked about, but I'm thinking the mirror thing must have happened on the first time we played with him, because we would have been, bare bones, with all our equipment and that type of stuff, for opening for them. But BTO was another one, and that's all I recall now.
And at the time, the pictures that I always see of you, you're always playing that red medallion Flying V, right?
Yeah, the Flying V. Yeah. Oh boy, I wish I still had that guitar, man.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Well, when I moved out here, I had my acoustics, and I had one electric, and I had an amp, and I had my PA, and my plan, which worked out great. I was playing solo out here in Phoenix, and but anyhow, I had to get rid of guitars. I had, oh man, But that guitar, I actually sold it to Kevin Bensing.
Yeah.
Kevin, his name's crossed your path, hasn't it?
I know him.
Yeah,
I know him.
Bass player with ATV. Just as I was leaving for Phoenix, we had made it into a band. But anyhow, I sold it to him because he had the other one. There was two of them that came into Oziki's music, and mine was two. It had a little gold emblem on it, and they were numbered. and one through whatever. I had 275, and Kevin had bought the other one. It was 276. And I can remember Kevin coming to me. He goes, "Do you still have the Flying V?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'd like to buy it because I'd like to have, both of them, in consecutive numbers." So, but I don't know whatever happened to it.
Yeah.
Kevin might have sold it,
Well, I know
when
that,
things went through the roof.
oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I know that, going back to when you were teaching at Osiki's, you actually taught John Rainey. And for
Yes.
a long time, John passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. And
Ah,
but John was, everybody, John owned everybody's stuff, it seems like, at some point. And John
yeah,
had,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he had posted a history of what happened to that Flying V, I know, on that group.
Ah.
And it went through a number of people's hands locally. And this was a number of years ago that he had to post, but I just thought it was funny. Like, that guitar was well known around town.
Well, that guitar. And then I also taught a gal named Maggie Flanagan.
Sure.
And Maggie Flanagan was singing with Kevin Bensink, and
Yep.
at the time. But anyhow, there were so many cool equipment things. I remember John Erickson. He worked at Dick Bulling's Music World.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a tech up there, and he says, "Hey, there's this really cool thing. You should come look at it." And he said, "We can't sell it. Nobody knows what the hell it is." It was called a magic bag, and it was made by the Vox Company. And it was this little thing that it looked like a pillow with little fringe on it, and you put it on with a strap, with a guitar strap, and it had a hose coming out of it, and inside was a little box, and you'd loop it through your guitar equipment, and then you had to get on the microphone and you could make it talk, and
Sure.
that was a talk box is what that was.
Right.
And I had that way before Jeff Beck and Joe Walsh
Peter
had one.
Frampton. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Before they even thought about it, I had it, and we were playing at Eagle Ridge with it, and people would go, "What is that, dude? Oh my God!" So, and then when I left Erie, I gave it to Marty, and Marty was out here, probably about 10, 11 years ago with the Donnie Iris band. And they were playing a gig, and he got in touch with me, and he goes, "Look, we're going to be out there. There was a bar out in an area called Cave Creek, Arizona, and it's basically nothing but bars. And every bar has a theme out there, and different football teams. Well, this one bar was a Pittsburgh bar, and it was one of the few times that Pittsburgh came out here to play the Cardinals."
Yeah.
And anyhow, they hired Donnie Iris to come out and play. And Marty got in touch with me, and he goes, "Dude, we're going to do this gig, And at that time when he come out here, he goes, the magic bag, I still have it."
Oh my gosh.
Dude.
That's killer.
And he's still got it to this day. If you talk to him, he's
That's
still
funny.
got that magic bag. But anyhow, and they came out here, and a drummer that I was working with in a classic rock band called Satellite Feed at the time out here, we all went to see Marty, and we got to meet Donnie Iris, and
Sure.
they were carrying a drummer named Kevin Valentine.
Right.
And I was just working with that drummer this morning. My drummer, he plays with me in our church band right now. And anyhow, he says, "Hey, remember that time, And I said, yeah. And I said, "I'm going to be talking to a guy today from Erie." And, I told him the story about what we were going to be doing today. And so anyhow, yeah, he was really enamored by meeting Kevin Valentine, because he played with all kinds of different rock bands. He was like
Sure.
this premier drummer at the time. This was I don't know, early 2000s, somewhere in there,
Well, I think he played with Donnie
out
for
here.
a
But
while. Yeah.
yeah, that's the last time I saw Marty, and basically talked with Marty was just that situation. And he even wanted. I had a Les Paul custom at the time, and he was real worried that certain equipment wasn't going to travel with him, and and he just put me on notice. I need this pedal, I need that pedal, and I happen to have them. And I said, well, you can use them for sure. And but when they got out here, everything traveled okay, and he didn't have to worry about it. But he was just using it as a backup. But
Gotcha. Okay.
anyhow, yeah.
Well,
So
whenever people talk about you, it seems like they mention Red, White, and Blueberry, and then they mention ATV. But in between that, I know you did Watership Down, right?
we did. Yeah, I was getting to that. That's my Keith Vasheko connection.
Oh,
But anyhow, yeah, Watership Down was Scott Campbell and his wife Gail.
right.
And yep, we did a little acoustic trio thing, and we ended up opening for Gino Vanelli.
Yeah. At the field house.
At the field house,
Yeah.
and we went down to, I believe it was Sharon, Pennsylvania. I think somewhere downstate. I know it wasn't Pittsburgh, but it was somewhere in between. Anyhow, and we played down there, and Keith came with us, and him and John Mazza were with us, and they were running the sound for us.
Right.
On the soundboard. And that's kind of, I had known Keith through Markham Guitars, and and the music store.
Yep.
And so, but anyhow, I said, we need a sound man, he says, well, John and I can come down and do it. So, and they did it in Erie. They did it to the field house, and those guys graciously, said, yeah, sure, go ahead. And they mixed the sound for us, and we didn't go over that well because, people were there to see Gino Vanelli.
Sure.
My
right.
God, and here's
and
this little trio trying to play some original music, acoustic stuff. And they were like, they didn't want to have any part of us.
I wonder,
but anyhow,
was Watership Down just acoustic, or what was it? Just originals, or did you do covers too? And how long were you around? No, we did
covers. Yeah, we did covers. I think we did some Fleetwood Mac, because Gail would sing that kind of stuff, and I'm not really sure. I can't remember the originals that we did. I know I ended up recording some of that stuff at Twang. That I have like cassettes of, I don't even have a cassette player, and I got all these cassettes. But
yeah.
Anyhow,
And Scott had been in Red, White, and Blueberry after you left.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And so that's how you knew him.
And I don't know anything about that, and what had happened. But, and also in the early 80s, after I moved out here, everybody visited me. John Erickson was out here, and he was out here on some kind of business. He was working, I don't know, he was living in Ohio or something, and he was working for a company that was out here, and he was actually staying at a hotel, like not too far from my apartment. We got together to have a few beers and reminisce and stuff like that. And, so that was the last time I saw John Erickson, and that was like maybe 82, 83, somewhere in there.
Well, Scott plays a lot in town here. He still plays quite a bit. He's in a few different bands.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, he's very good. Yeah, he plays in
cool.
our Jimmy Buffett big band, Key West Express, and he has two different duos that he does. And he's really active and a great guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I remember him so well, and we had a lot of fun, and then things kind of morphed into, Keith and I got together, and we were like, we should do this, we should make like a little trio, and he was thinking that was a cool idea, at that time, and it did work, and then he had Bob Arlett. He was in a high school at McDowell High School with a band with him.
That's how
singing, and that's how Bob Arlett came into it, and the three of us just, got together, and we were, really had a lot in common, and we liked each other, and that we used to rehearse right there where Twang Studios is, and Keith's house there. Yeah. And it was just a really nice thing, and then of course Kevin was always, on the perimeter of everything, Kevin Bensick, and
right.
yeah, he did a lot of artwork for us and stuff like that. I can remember we at the Warner Theater, which I've heard has changed into a pretty big venue of music.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
And anyhow, we opened for Kenny Rankin, and Kenny Rankin was just this I don't know, singer-songwriter kind of guy, and I can't even remember what song he had out. I don't know. I can't even remember what he did.
Yeah, I don't know that
But
name.
anyhow, it was just him and guitar, and then ATV opened up for him, and I remember Kevin did the artwork for that, and it was really, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
then
did Bob?
We just kind of went around, and we were playing and playing and playing and playing, and then we got this brainstorm to make it into a band,
Okay, that's what I wondered.
With a drummer. Yeah, and that's Kevin actually, it was a no-brainer. Kevin played bass, and we needed a bass player, so you got the gig, man. And
right.
And then we found this drummer, and he, we auditioned a few drummers, but we settled on this one drummer, and he had a nice basement at his parents' house, so it all worked out. We could rehearse there.
And what was his name?
Tim Conway. Tim
Okay.
Conway was his name.
Perfect.
And
okay.
He just he fit in with the guys, and then and that was the last part of ATV. That I recall. We played a gig. Remember when I just a little bit ago I mentioned Altadonna's downtown.
Yeah, right.
And ATV was playing there with our band, and I can remember because Tim Conway was going to Gannon College at the time, and he invited his frat brothers. There was a ton of people there just hooting and hollering for us. And anyhow, we were opening for a band from Chicago, and it was an all-girl band called Bitch, and they were really good. And I can remember on their setup that they had these fans on the floors in front of them, like monitors, and it blew their hair,
Right.
They all had long hair, and it blew their hair back. And I was like, yeah, this is way cool. And then there was a young fella that used to follow our band around, and I don't know, he put me in touch with some people that's how we've got some jobs at the field house, I think. Eddie DiDonicio.
Yeah.
And anyhow, Eddie goes, hey, you know who the manager of Bitch is from Chicago? And I said, no, John Shantz. And I'm like, you're kidding me. And John, or Jim, I've heard him called both, was the lead singer in The Shadows of Night with the big hit of Gloria,
Oh,
and we
right.
got to talk with him. He just passed away recently. He was like 75 or 76 or something like that. He was like a few years older than we were. And anyhow, I remember meeting him, and I remember on our sound check, we started playing Gloria, and he was back there laughing. And I was like, I wanted him to come up so bad and sing, this is just on a sound check,
Sure.
But he never did.
And
how
did the name Desperado? I know, was that what you were called early before ATV?
Yes, yeah. We started that out as Desperado. I can't remember. I think we played some gigs, but under Desperado. But I can remember Keith saying, he goes, man, we've got to get something different for the name. Desperado just isn't, I don't know. It's the name of a song, and and so we just Arlette, Talarico, and Vasheko, and
right.
And then, that was too long. So ATV was,
perfect. Yeah.
the way to go,
And Kevin designed your logo, right?
He did. And I'm thinking that Kenny Rankin concert that we opened for at Warner was the first time he that was the first time we introduced ourselves as ATV.
Oh,
I think I'm not positive about that, but I remember the poster, being ATV, and it was new, and for us, and that type of thing.
gotcha. Okay. And I
But
was looking at some old ads in the newspaper. I know you guys played the old docks. A lot of folks remember that. You played the
yep,
Forest Hills Racket Club, which it's
we did.
weird to think that a racket club had a bar that had a lot of live music, but it did.
Yeah,
Molly
yeah,
B's. It was called the Emergency Room, obviously before that, and I think it had other names. But Molly B's was a big rock club for a long time.
yeah. And we played at a little place out there on 12th Street. I think it was called the Poet and Peasant.
Okay, yeah.
Um, Yeah, I remember playing there quite a bit. They had a lot of acoustic music. That was before we put the drums and the bass in. We used to play out there. That's when a lot of people had followed us. Were coming around to gigs, and we had our little bit of a following and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, you definitely had a following, and that's what I mean. A lot of folks remember those, Red, White, and Blueberry, ATV. You guys were around for a long time. What
Yeah.
happened? What happened then? I mean, you decide to move to Phoenix in '81. How old are you at this point?
I had just turned 30 years old,
Okay.
and I knew I wanted to live out west.
Mm,
And I had visited some friends in Colorado, and I'd visited some friends in California, and I was just like, nah, it just doesn't feel, too daunting.
mm,
And so I ended up visiting some family friends, actually down in Tucson, and then I visited some other friends up in Phoenix, and I really liked it. I the music scene. I knew I wanted to come out here and just kind of do a solo thing. When I got out here in '81, Chip, there was 4 of us out here playing solo.
mm.
And those other 3 guys took me under their wing, and they said, okay, here's where you want to go audition. We're going to put a word in for you. I ended up playing at all these great clubs
Oh,
and out here doing solo. And, when I was just getting started, I needed a promo photo. And this guy that was at one of my gigs, he says, hey, look, I'm a photographer. I'll do it for you, no charge.
mhm.
And so I said, oh, that's cool. So he said, let's go out to this place called Red Rocks. And there's not the one in Colorado, but
Yeah,
we had this little Papago rocks that were red and out here. And then nearby was a huge outdoor venue for music. Well, anyhow, this night we're out there, and we're taking photos and that type of thing. And I think maybe that photograph was Joel used it maybe
yeah,
for his article. Yeah,
yep.
there's me holding my guitar, and you can see a line of. But the interesting thing about that photo is we were sitting there, and music started playing really loud, and we're like, "Wow, it sounds like Elton John." And we looked at each other and started laughing. We're like, "That is Elton John,"
Oh,
and he was.
geez.
He was at that outdoor venue that night, and goodbye Yellow Brick Road. And we were
Wow.
just laughing because we thought, geez, somebody's got their stereo up really loud. And it was
And
actually Elton John. And then I went on playing, and I met all these different people. But my very first job out here and I'm kind of babbling on, if that's okay.
no, you're fine. And at this point, you're going by Patrick Allen, your middle name, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
I was doing that, and but anyhow, my very first gig out here, I'm playing, and there's this group of girls that came in, that sat down, and they were really into the music. I was playing, I played some original songs, not much, couple, 2 or 3, and I played like a lot of Eagles and, that kind of acoustic, Dan
Sure.
Fogelberg and James Taylor, that kind of stuff. And they said, wow, and this one gal comes up to me, and she goes, and I said, who are you guys? And she said, well, we're Delta Airlines stewardesses, and we're based here. And she said, you really need to meet my boyfriend. And I said, okay. And she says, he's from England and he's a little bit older. And I said, well, whatever, and she says he loves to write songs and that kind of stuff. And I said, okay. So I get to meet him, and he comes over to my apartment a couple of times, and I went over to his place, and his name is Ian Samwell.
Yeah.
And he's from London, England. And okay, so Ian Samwell was the bass player for the Cliff Richards band.
Mm-hmm.
In England, and Cliff Richards was the big band before the Beatles.
Sure.
I mean, the Beatles used to go and watch Cliff Richards play.
Right.
And so anyhow, I get to meet him. He had produced the first America album, which I found out. And we were working on some songs and stuff like that, and he got hooked up with a studio down here that I met some other friends, and everybody kind of knew everybody anyhow. And he went down and he did some production things down in this studio. And, but I lost track of him, and I found out maybe about, 5 or 6 years ago that he had passed away.
Oh.
But anyhow, that was my very first connection here when I was in Phoenix. And that studio that we worked at, I invited, they said, do you know any other singer-songwriters? Well, at the time, excuse me, at the time, John Ems was up in Denver, Colorado, and I used to go up and visit him. He'd get me gigs up there, when it was really hot up down here in the summer. I'd go up there and play and stay at his place, and vice versa. When it was cold up there, he'd come down here and sleep on my couch. Well, anyhow, this studio said, look, we're going to do some music videos along with some recording. Do you know any singer-songwriter type people? I says, yeah, John would be interested in that. So he came down here and he recorded some stuff down here. And it wasn't She's in Love with the Boy, which was Trisha Yearwood's first hit that he wrote. It wasn't that song, but the recordings that he did down here and the videos that were played led to a girl, some up-and-coming singer from Nashville wanted to, at the time she said, have you got any songs? And he pitched her She's in Love with the Boy. And she actually did it. And that's how Trisha Yearwood heard it.
Right.
Her producers heard it, and then she recorded it, and then it's history from there. And then John moved to Nashville.
That's right. Yeah.
And then John.
I had John on on an episode, I think a season or so ago, and he told that story. Yeah, and very interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of connections, and I remember hanging out with John and up there and down here and that kind of stuff. We had a lot of fun, and then here's the part you're gonna love, Chip. So I end up with this gig. I'm still doing solo stuff. And I end up with this gig that everybody wanted in town. A friend of mine played there, and he says it was a hotel. It was a chain, 3 hotels, and they were called the Point Resorts, and it was the most sought after gig. And you either played like in a little restaurant bar on the side of the restaurant, or you played at a pool bar, that type of thing. And they had like a PA set up in every room, and then you just walked in and plugged in.
Nice.
Well, the Point Resort at the time, it's a Hilton now. Hilton owns it. But anyhow, at the time, that's when all of these different bands that came to town would stay. And so my first experience, I'm playing at the pool bar at the Tapatio Point. And in comes walking in Jimmy Page.
Oh, jeez.
And at the time, it was not, and he was with this gorgeous woman, and he comes walking in, and it was like just before I was just finishing up, and they had played. He was with the Firm at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And the Firm had Paul Rogers from Bad Company singing.
Yep.
And couple other people I'm not familiar with, but anyhow, it was after Led Zeppelin. But anyhow, I got his autograph, of course. And back then there was no cell phone cameras and things like that, which would have been great because I could have had some amazing pictures. But at the time, I had my black J200 Gibson, which is like an Everly Brothers model, and he came up and he goes, "Oh." He goes, "That is really a fine guitar. I love it." And I handed it to him, and
Wow.
he played a little bit of Black Mountain Side
Nice.
on it, and I was like, oh man, I'm never washing this guitar,
Well, that's something you'll never forget. Yeah, that's for sure.
I know. And then wait, it gets better, Chip.
Oh.
So then we covered for each other in different bars in this system of hotels, and I'm playing at this other pool bar at Squaw Peak. It's now called Piestewa Peak. And but anyhow, I'm playing this bar, and AC/DC walks in.
Oh,
a couple of those guys, and it was Malcolm and the singer,
Brian Johnson.
Yeah. And right. They came in. At that point in time, I didn't know much about real hard rock AC/DC. I just knew who they were and that kind of thing, And then that same bar, another night comes Clarence Clemens comes in from Bruce Springsteen's band.
Yeah.
And he came in, and I got to meet him and talk to him. And but not Bruce Springsteen. He didn't come.
Sure, right.
He stayed up in the room. But anyhow, they would come down and have a drink, and that kind of stuff. And I'd play, and they'd listen and clap and stuff like that. And I met They were having dinner at this one little restaurant, and I'm playing in the bar, and John Anderson comes walking over, and of course my black Everly Brothers guitar is a lightning rod, for different people. And he goes, "Oh, beautiful guitar," And at the time, his voice was probably as high as mine right now on this telephone conversation. But, Owner of the Lonely Hearts was Owner of the Lonely Hearts. That was out at this particular time, and that's what they were touring for, and he was just oogling at my guitar, and, he goes, "What time do you get off, man?" I said, "Well, about 7:00. He goes, "Yeah, come down to the show," and I'm like, "Wow, well, I'll try," but anyhow, I met him, and I met somebody else in the band I'm not familiar with, and then here's the best one, Chip. Okay. I'm saving the best one for last. Okay. So I'm playing at the pool bar at the Tapatio where I met Jimmy Page, okay?
All right.
And it opens out into you can actually swim up to the bar, okay? And it's one of those kind of things, But anyhow, I came on a Tuesday afternoon to go up to the office and get my check. Well, I come walking in, and a buddy of mine that works the bar, and we're talking, and I'm having a beer, and he goes, "What are you here for?" And I said, "I'm just going to rob and get my check." And he goes, "Hey, do me a favor." He said, "Here, take this tray. Here's an iced tea on this tray, and run it over to that girl over there." And I said, "Okay, all right." Yeah, it's like on the way up to the office, So I'm walking across, and there's this gorgeous gal in a bikini, of course, sitting there sunning herself, and I walk up and I said, "Here's your tea." And I looked at her, and it was Madonna.
Oh my gosh.
She was here for a show that night, and of course she was staying at Tapatio, the Point Tapatio, and I'm giving her a nice tea.
Nice.
And she goes, "Thank you very much." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Wow.
I was just like, at that time, I was just, whoa,
Yeah.
And I went up, and so that's my last best story as far as like playing on here.
Well, I mean, but let's fast forward to where you are today. You said you're still playing your praise band for church, right? You're still playing today?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, the drummer that worked in my band, that met Marty and Donnie Iris and all those people, I still work with him. Okay. He was playing today, as a matter of fact, and we have a praise band that's, God, it's like a straight ahead rock band,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
it's just an amazing band. I mean, when when you think of a church band, you kind of think,
Oh
the
yeah,
first thing
no.
that comes to your mind is this little old lady playing an organ, and but yeah, we've got, we have various gals that sing and some guys and keyboard player and a couple acoustics. I play mostly acoustic and mandolin, and I sing once in a while. I'll sing a few different things and stuff like that. And we have a couple of guitar players that rotate in and out and stuff like that. So it's a really cool band. And it's, you come in every Sunday and you play for about, 200-300 people, and most of them are sober,
That's right. It's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a relief, so.
Do you do any solo gigs anymore?
I have done a few things here and there before the pandemic hit,
Sure.
and I've done a few little coffee house things and stuff like that, and I don't know, it's kind of a pain in the butt, to be playing out nowadays, and I know live music, as far as bars went, really at one point in time took a hit from karaoke and all that kind of stuff, and people just weren't interested in live music anymore. And now it's starting to come back again, and I'm
Right.
like, I'd rather, just go at church and plug in and play,
Sure. You're still cutting hair?
Yep. I have a shop. I've had a shop now for, about 29 years now.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And next year I'm planning to, I don't want to stop cutting hair. I'm 71 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And next year, the lease on my barber shop is going to be up. And I don't want to stop cutting hair because I enjoy it. And it's an easy gig, and
Sure.
so I'm going to work at a friend's shop, and I'm going to close mine up and hopefully bring as many customers as I can, after 20 some years, you acquire, I'm doing guys that I did their sons, and now I'm doing their sons' grandsons,
Sure.
hair. And, so, that's my plan next year is just kind of, I won't be cutting back, I'll be still cutting the same amount of time and stuff like that, just at a different place, and I won't have to worry about, upkeep of a shop and that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
Work at somebody else's. So that's my plan with hair cutting, and yeah.
I think this was exactly what I was looking for from you. I mean, a lot of folks have asked where you are and get caught up with what you've been doing. And did we miss anything? Did we miss any bands?
No, I think we hit everything.
All right. Well, that's perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
All the way up through my solo career.
Yeah. What about didn't you have a song, Wishful Drinking?
Yep, Wishful Drinking. As a matter of fact, Ian Samwell, him and I worked on that a little bit. And at the time, it was like just between Erie and Phoenix, in Nashville. I had Acuff Rose Music put a hole on it. And at the time, drinking songs were like people were staying away from them,
Oh, yeah.
And so that one just kind of went by the wayside,
Got it.
And John Ems and I had one song, I'll Be Under the Table Before I Get Over You, which was a drinking song kind of thing. But John helped me on that one. And but I don't know, John just kind of retired.
Yeah,
and
right.
And I made a recording of that. Our church had a studio, just a really nice studio, and affiliated with it. And our lead guitar player from the church band, ran the studio, and I recorded about 3 CDs there. One with my band, Satellite Feed, and then a couple other things, just solo stuff, and kind of acoustic music. And that one song that John and I worked on, that's on one of them. So
if you have any of those songs that you can send me, I can include those on your episode page.
There's a couple things on YouTube.
Oh, is there? Okay. Well, Pat, I appreciate
right.
you going down memory lane with me. This was a great episode of the Erie Music History Podcast. Thanks a lot for being my guest.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a ton of fun.
All right. Thanks for listening, and special thanks to the JPT Foundation for sponsoring the podcast and for letting us use their events hall once a month for our free music night featuring the fabulous Leftovers. They're a band of longtime Erie musicians who play for an hour and then are followed by 2 hours of an open mic. All the proceeds for the event go to the Second Harvest Food Bank. The music nights are held the first Tuesday of the month from 6 to 9 at the Events Hall, which is located on West 38th Street in the plaza right next to Our Lady of Peace Church. If you like the podcast and would like to help me out, because this is not a money-making endeavor for me, you can contribute a few bucks via Venmo or Patreon. Just go to the Erie Music History Podcast website for the links. And finally, for information on what bands and musicians are playing in Erie and the surrounding area, please check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast and webpage. Jack gives you all the details you need each week on who is playing where. That's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast. So, I'm Chip Shell, and I thank you again for listening to the Erie Music History Podcast.